foundations in,
Okay. I think we are live.
or at least we're not using their platform. Anyway, we're good. So
Thank you.
I'll
So
make you back
welcome.
the host now.
All right. Um, okay. Let me just check if we are definitely live. Looks like we are. Only thing we need to change later is the name of the meeting because it's still mentioning ecosystem. It's supposed to be security team meeting. All right, so welcome everybody to the Node.js security team meeting. That's the last one of March. We have a lot to discuss today, but before start, does anybody have any announcement? Nope. All right. So as usual, we go to the vulnerability review, OpenSSF scorecard monitor review, and then we will discuss some topics from the Node.js security working group. So in the vulnerability review, I don't think we have any news from last meeting. All good since February 6th. So we can move it on. For OpenSSF scorecard monitor review, Ulysses.
Yeah, I didn't create the PR now because I'm trying to fix in the Git author, so it will be good recognized. But anyway, I just created an issue and I will close it. So far has been like the typical discrepancies that we see fluctuations, nothing to do from our side anyway. And an important thing, like we have discussed in this with Sebastian, probably the packets. I mean, PKGS organization that also is part of Node.js will have probably their own tracking tool for their own scorecard and so on. So yeah, if they need help to do the setup or whatever, we probably can support them. But the otherwise seems like they are doing the initiative, but separately.
Okay, yeah, looks good. One thing that I don't know the best approach to deal with is that the OpenSSF scorecard, it's working well for us because we have meetings and we have maintenance every other week. But I expect for projects that is run by less volunteers, this will be, it's like harder to keep like a recurrent checks on those things.
Yeah.
Is that possible to have like alerts, or instead of reviewing a pull request every week about the scorecard, is that possible to only receive updates if something drastic changes? Like if we reduce the score by 2 points or 3 points?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I can think about it because one of the challenges why we need this PR is because we don't allow like um Git, I mean,
Right,
automations to write on
permissions.
the Git history anyway. So that's going to still there, I think. But we can fix the threshold on the issue report that we see. So maybe we can say like if it's changing like more than 2 points, then let me know, something like that. Maybe I can just go with a
Yeah.
simple threshold and see how that works in a beta model. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
true that organizations that don't have like a volunteers or security working groups or something similar to this structure, they probably are not tracking this at all. It become like the Penda
Yeah.
bot or whatever, right? So once in
Mhm.
a while, you just check it and see what happened. But
Okay.
yeah.
So not new except for the PKJS uh, enabling OpenSSF scorecard. Now we go to two important discussions. I would start with the WDAC integration on Windows since Robert is here. So let me give you some context. Uh, Robert is working on WDAC integration for Windows for a long time. We have been discussing it on the security work group meeting several times. We are reviewing the pull request every moment. And now looks like the pull request is ready to go. We have the CI green, we have one approval. And also, but before merging that, I would like to discuss it and one last time here in this meeting about the expectations behind this feature. One thing important to mention is that this feature is experimental. It's under stability 1.1, active development. The second one is the opt-in feature. So it won't be enabled by default, or shouldn't be enabled by default, and this is not part of this discussion. Any other concern from your side on this feature? I believe that the next steps are, once users are using that, we start measuring if that's feasible, because one concern I have is that the code integrity is all about, it's sync. All the operations are sync. They block the event loop. However, it does some caching. So if you try to read a file from first time, it will block the event loop. But the second time, I believe that, I don't know if it does have some caching, Robert. Does it?
Yeah, the underlying mechanism has some caching. I'm not incredibly familiar with the details since the implementation has been handled by a team that I work with, but I don't directly work on this specific code for it. But there is some caching. So once a file has been verified as is the hash matching what the signature says, we don't need to like rehash the full file every time.
Okay, but the check in the cache is also synchronous, right? We don't do it on
Yeah,
the
all
Node.js
these.
side.
That's correct. All these calls will be blocking.
Okay, okay. So I believe that the idea is most land it at experimental, give some time for people to use that, and see how feasible is to apply it on a daily basis. Like I expect that being blocking the event loop several times might not be ideal for most users, but I might be wrong. So I think we will only know that by landing it. And the code looks good to me.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, the blocking calls will only be made if the user has chosen to opt into this feature. So that we won't be checking the files on it. This will be probably initially a very limited set of users will be using this, and I'm working with some teams internally at Microsoft who are using Node.js on their production workloads, and I'll be working with them to get this feature rolled out so we can start taking performance metrics with them. And I imagine there might be a couple more iterations on this as we start rolling this out to more and more teams and collecting feedback.
One thing, I'm looking to the code again, but I don't see how users can opt into it.
So opting into it is done at the operating system level. On
Okay.
Windows, yeah. So on Windows, you have a code integrity policy, and this is on high risk workload machines. So again, I mean, to some extent, all Windows machines are opting into code integrity at some level, but the level that we're talking about is this is more of a production level where sorry, where a system administrator will have to author a code integrity policy with some specific values that they write in there to tell Node to turn on this feature.
I believe that we should put that behind a Node.js flag as well, because assuming users that already makes use of that on Node.js, it won't have any, they won't expect anything. But once they upgrade their version and now Node.js starts blocking things or start redirecting things to the code integrity, they might be affected. So I consider that either as a major, which I don't think we want that, because it will go only on Node.js 25 and we'll have less people testing it. So I believe the right way to do that is to put that behind a flag. If someone passed -- experimental WDAC, then we will enable that code by default. Otherwise, it will be a no operation. What do you think about it?
I think we are trying to avoid any any toggles for this feature that are controlled in user space. So if, for example, an adversary got on a machine with Node, they could just avoid the code integrity feature by launching Node without this flag. In the current implementation, they would have to have access to a code integrity policy signing certificate in order to disable Node code integrity on a machine running in code integrity enforcement mode. So, what could you reiterate the concerns with why you would prefer to have a flag being passed as opposed to an operating system, the OS telling Node that it should start enforcing code integrity? Because there is a flag that someone has to set in order to turn this feature on, and it's a system administrator who's authoring the code integrity policy on the machine. They have to specifically put there's in your code integrity policy, there's a key value pair section, and we've added one for Node code integrity specifically. So they have to go in there and say Node code integrity on in order for this feature to be enabled. Michael, I see you have your hand up.
I was just gonna add that I can see that typically we've added flags in Node itself to turn things on and off. So I can kind of understand why that would be could we do that? But I also see in this particular case, I do think the flag in the OS makes sense. There is a way for people to say, I want this on and off. And if we make it a flag, it can't enforce it to the same extent that you can if the OS has some protected way to do that, right? So I just wanted to, I understand your explanation, and I can kind of see why it being turned on that way versus a flag makes sense, even if we often use the flags. In this case, it's a little bit different.
And yeah, I agree. And one thing that I'm looking now is the tests. You have the code integrity test .node, which seems to be okay. No, that's fine. But I don't see a check exactly for let me see one thing, because how do you test the policy and how do you set policy in the tests?
Yeah, so that's historically been somewhat difficult to test interpreters that opt into code that have what we call this set of interpreters that are aware of Windows code integrity, quote unquote, enlightened. For example, PowerShell is one interpreter that does it. Historically, it's somewhat difficult to test these under real working conditions because you need to have the machine that the tests are running on be in a code integrity enforcement mode. So that pretty much locks down most the code that can run on the machine, which makes testing somewhat fickle and difficult to do. In order to get around that, what I've done is mock the system primitive that we're calling to just say, hey, Node, operate, just pretend like there's a code integrity policy that's telling you to enforce code integrity. And that's how I've done it in these tests. If there is a desire to kind of work in a more to author tests that more directly reflect a real code integrity environment, we can look into ways of doing it. I know that we have we have a Windows node.js team, vendor team internally at Microsoft that have helped me with some of the build and test stuff in the past. And we can start to look at ways in this. I would say that if it gets to that point where I'd push back a little before we get there because it is a pretty complicated environment to get it set up.
Yeah, and I believe that this will turn tests into more flaky, and that would require some a new CI from our side that supports WDAC. I mean, I don't think that's the way to go for the experimental feature. I just wondering because currently the tests are just functional, right? We expect the is allowed to execute file return either true or false, but I don't know how Windows can if that throws some undefined behavior. But we will see that if someone raises an issue or something about that.
I kind of wonder, like Robert, if you've
Mhm.
got an environment where you've set up and test and are doing testing, is that anywhere that like people could go and look? I'm just thinking like the reality is if somebody reports an issue with this, we're just gonna say, that's Microsoft who's supporting that. Go talk to Robert, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it would almost be nice if we could document that, like if we're not testing it because it's hard to test and like totally don't want to have us have this really complicated environment. Like, but if we could somehow document and Microsoft is actually testing this over here
Yeah.
and go look at the test result, right? So like somebody wants to say like, well, I did this, and they could go and say like, oh, well, I see there's a test that's red.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not out of the, versus like, that's just my thought. Like if there's somewhere where
Yeah.
they could go and get some information without anybody having to be involved, that would probably be better for everybody, right?
Yeah.
So
I
you
think
don't need
that,
to answer now, but like that was
yeah,
just
yeah.
my thought, right? Like probably
I
more of
think
a
that's
nice
a good
thing.
idea. I can poke around internally, see what we can do for like a more public facing kind of test page for something related to that. And there's also kind of like a slight kind of I could see there being sort of a gray area with basically a white hat researcher poking at this feature because there's like there are potentially, let's just say, not that I know of any right now, but like let's say someone finds a problem with the actual OS API, then that's
Yep,
like a separate problem for Microsoft or to deal with. Like that's something that we would for sure handle.
yep,
But then there's also potential problems with like maybe there's a workaround. Someone found a workaround in like the loader implementation in Node.js that manages to bypass this call. That's specifically a node problem, which I would then address in kind of a Node.js capacity, I
right.
guess.
Yep.
So I would, yeah, I'll see if there's some way to clarify that distinction for people for white hat researchers poking at this. And then, yeah, see, make sure that distinction's clear and so they could get pointed in the right direction for this.
Yeah, and even like, I'm just thinking like we want our triage team, for example, to know like anything that comes into related to this, we can just sort of pull you into the HackerOne issue and let you
Mhm.
figure it out, right? Like
Yeah.
that kind
Okay, yeah, I can where should that go in the official documentation? Like the what is it? I wrote a codeintegrity.md page that goes under the internal API docs, I believe. I Does that sound like an appropriate place to put that or elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm trying to like I don't think we have something quite like this, but
Yeah.
it's the like I think if there was like some external testing, it might be a good place to point to it to say like, oh, and the testing is over here. Um, and I like I'm just saying like what I just mentioned in terms of like for our triage people, that's more internal.
Yeah.
Um, I can't think we have a good we have like the
Yeah.
notion code owners. So I
Mhm.
don't know, Raphael, if we for this, if there's already set up like a code integrity code owners kind of thing.
We could create a thing for that,
Okay.
but I feel that it should go to the Node.js Windows thing in any case because uh, this so far we don't have a code integrity for Windows or Mac OS that's
Right.
to attach it to Windows,
Yeah.
and most of the errors we might see are also related to the Windows. Uh, so I believe that adding them to the Windows theme might work.
So if we add Robert and whoever else onto the
Yeah.
Windows
Yeah.
team, yeah, that works. I think that's not a bad idea for now.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then just in terms of the like the triage team, we just, like we can communicate somewhere like, yeah, if anything gets reported on this feature, then,
Yeah.
here's the app meant like, I guess like the app mention isn't going to work because like that would only be if there's more like public questions and stuff, but we can somehow figure out how to um to handle it. Anyway, I think that we don't have to stop block on that, but that's just the other thing we should sort of figure out.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so what do you think is the next steps, Michael? I have also pinged a TSC in that uh, pull request, but no approval so far, or
So the
no review
PR
so far.
is
I'm sending
ready
in the
to
chat.
go. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it does seem ready to go for me. There's just one minor thing, which is changing the introduced value instead of 2400, we'll use the version that it will land, but there's no reason to update the pull request to change only this part because it will require CI run and this takes some time.
okay. I do see like in terms of there's at least one blocking comment.
Yeah, it was a previous blog from me and Yagis, but Yagis didn't
Yeah.
review yet.
Okay.
It's the update, so I don't know the state.
Okay. So you've taken a detailed look through and you're comfortable with it, right?
It does. I mean, I for the Windows part, I don't
Yeah.
have much influence, but
Right.
how this is designed in the Node.js API, it does sound good to me.
Okay. And so I can take a look through and I'll do a quick look. And as long as it's sort of experimental, I think we just want to like if we can get Yagiz to remove his block and a couple more approvals, just land it like we've done other things, right? Like you've mentioned it to the TC enough that if people wanted to object, they could.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at this point, like, yeah, I'll try and later today add my approval, and then that gives you two as long as there isn't any objections, right? And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would then say like, let's go ahead and land it and sort of go from there.
Yeah, and if we don't remove if Yagis didn't review in time for the next TSC meeting, I will make sure to mention in the TSC meeting so people will get notified and review it if needed.
Yeah. Like I see there's a comment like we should also update the files in the typings folder. Is that one addressed or?
Um,
Is that the remaining blocking comment? The one about the
yeah,
okay. I can do that. That seems reasonable. I just didn't really understand how to do. I'm not too familiar with I imagine that's bindings for TypeScript or something like that. I
yeah, we
wasn't really
have a
familiar.
folder. We have a folder called typings,
Mhm.
and we have like internal types. If you just check that folder, you see exactly. It's not. It's a trivial change. You just need
Okay.
to the code integrity part there, and that should do okay. Should be okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't like code gen or something that I just
No,
have to
no.
run it through a tool. Okay, that's something that I can handwrite. Yeah,
So
I can do that as part of this PR if we're okay with bumping out another iteration and going through waiting for a green CI, or I can just, if you want, I can just submit another PR after this one is merged with the necessary typings associated with it, whichever one just seems easier in terms of
yeah,
logistics.
I think that considering this is a big feature, I would include everything on this pull request. I would not do a follow-up pull request because, getting approvals might be hard if things are not 100% correct.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, exactly. It's easier. The easier path is to just address all comments,
yep.
Okay.
and
Sounds
then
good.
And make sure also to remove the introduced in 2400. You can just remove that line and we can update
Okay.
that once that feature lands so we know exactly which version it was
Okay.
introduced.
I think I got the linter yelling at me about something like that, which is why I added that line. But if that that might
Okay.
have just been a warning or something.
Well,
I'll
you
try
have to
removing
add
it.
something. There is
Yeah,
something you
replace
have to
me.
add. Go
Okay.
ahead. It needs to be like at replace me or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have like if you just put replace me a full string instead of the version in the release
Mhm.
process, we remove the replace me to the version that we are going to release.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll do that. That sounds a lot easier then. I'll do that.
Yeah, that's probably what the linter was complaining about. So.
Yeah.
But I think I see it's okay. Then there is so there is another comment, the one from James says, given this is Windows only, I would generally prefer that this entire internal binding be only be compiled on Windows with the non-functional stubs implemented solely in JavaScript on other platforms.
Yes, I think it was already addressed.
Okay. I guess I see then it's hidden my other things, as long as that one has been addressed. So yeah. I do see it says outdated as well. Okay, so never mind. I'm just looking through to see if there's any other comments. So really the one from Yagas is the only one, and then the one that you had, okay, I see some outdated. So the only one that's left is the one from Yagas and the one from you in terms of the replacement.
Okay, and if that's not asking too much, Robert, can you also update the pull request description to have a notable change section that we will include in the release? It doesn't need to be big like the pull request, the full pull request description. It's just something very small and practical, informing the users what they can do to use that feature and what has changed.
Okay. That just needs to be just a generic heading in the PR.
Yeah.
I don't need specific formatting for
No.
that.
We will
Okay.
copy and make that just.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can do that.
All right then.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your help. This has been a long time coming, and I'm glad that thank you for your patience in helping me work through all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it would
It
be
was
interesting
amazing.
as well, like to like once, like you said, since you said that you're using it in real life applications, it would be interesting to learn more about that at some point. Like, and I'm just thinking like a public blog post or something like that would be kind of an interesting for the project as well. Like to say, look, here's something and it's actually being used at Microsoft to be more secure. Kind of interesting.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think I'm not sure. Lee, who's been on a couple of these meetings with me, was trying to help hype me up and say, yeah, we should kind of like pull both our company and Node together a bit and kind of drum up some blog posts to get some hype and see like have actual people outside the company using this feature as well. So I'll definitely be looking forward to doing something like that, and I'll be kind of keeping touch as with y'all as kind of we go through performance testing and stuff like that internally with this and keep you up to
Yeah,
date on
sounds
that.
good. And I think, through the way you've also kind of like said, hey, like, and there is some Linux people working on similar things. So even if we could pull them into that, like just as part of like, well, it's not implemented now, but it is something that say the Linux team is working on as well. And that would be good to weave into
Yeah, I'll reach out to because I believe the OS primitives for this on Linux have landed or have been
Okay.
upstreamed a little while ago.
Yep.
I'll reach out to Mikhail because it seemed like he was excited to implement this in Node as well.
Okay.
So I'll see where he's at with that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. I have added a few comments in the minutes. Can you check, Michael, if we have like mentioned everything there?
I'm just saying, okay, I'm reading through. Okay.
I
Yep.
think.
And then I'm just gonna say, like, under that one, it's just like no objections so far. So unless there are new ones after mention. In TSC meeting will plan to land after current comments are addressed, right? Like we'll just make it
Yep.
specific. Like that's what we said we'll do. And you
Uh-huh.
know, I think nobody should be able to say like, hey, we didn't know. So sounds good.
Okay. Okay, I think it's time to go to the next issue, which is applied security best practice. Basically, we have been doing, I did the GitHub security course with Carlos, and one of the suggestion, which is something that we already knew, is that CodeKL could find important or could fill some important security gaps. And we have enabled it on Node.js security working group repository, but we did not enable that on Node.js core. And I took the action to open that request using the step security bot. The code looks good to me, but we have objections, I think, from explicitly from Michael Zazos, and one
Right.
that might be from Richard. So I think we might want to address that or to discuss if we want to have that feature, and why not.
Right. I guess so in terms of the objections, what are the concerns, right? Like I see here where it's basically like, hey, this takes over an hour, right? And I totally understand like, okay, here's another thing that's going to run for a long time. If that's longer than our normal thing with Coverity. So I think CodeQL, like, is it doing a static analysis?
Yes,
Right. Okay.
we could create, like, we could have a static analysis, and we could also have like custom analysis. We can use their custom carries to, for instance, if we forget to include a check the certain in the Node.js source folder, CodeQL must inform us because it might throw some errors. If you see the last run that Targos mentioned, I'm sending the chat.
Yeah.
The action that takes more time is the C++ one. It takes about 2 hours to conclude. The JavaScript
Right.
one is very fast, actually 10 minutes.
Okay.
And maybe if the time if the time is a constraint that we don't want, we might want to remove the C++. But one thing important to mention is that our GitHub CI already takes 3 hours. So this is not a sequential run. This will run in parallel. So I don't think why that matters. I don't think this will matter in the end, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I think the thing is though, is that like we've we typically, if somebody said, hey, I want to add my new platform as part of the regular run, and it took 2 hours, we would say that's too long, right? Like we typically have for like an individual platform have been like, an hour is pushing it already. And even though it's not like sequential, I think they all kind of add up, and it also takes 2 hours of a machine time, right? So like that's a bunch of resources that maybe something else won't be able to run because it's running. So I kind of still get the concern there. I like the idea of like, could we start by turning on the JavaScript ones, or the other, like if the other three are like 10 minutes and done, maybe that's like a quick win where you're like, okay, well, we've turned
Yeah.
on all C++ and it's quick. And like, if we say like, oh yeah, and this has been finding some really interesting things, then it's like, okay, that's good. And
Or
then
we could enable it only on release proposals.
I would have actually gone something more like nightly. The problem I see with release proposals is like, then whose job is it to go fix everything, right? Like so Coverity, it just, I'm bringing that because like that's a similar static analysis that runs nightly. We get a report. There's a bunch of false positives. somebody's got to go look at those. I've spent some time like behind the scenes, just sort of like, oh, I'll take a look. Some of them I are like, some of them you're like, yeah, this is clearly like we didn't initialize a variable. I can submit a PR to do it. But then there's a whole bunch of them which are like, I don't really know what to do with these. Like they're hard to figure out because of like the way we're including things like libuv and all that. And so somebody's got to go and look at them. And I don't think you want necessarily, I guess where I was going is you don't necessarily want to wait for the release because then what are you going to do once you get the release proposal? So something like nightly would divorce it from everything else.
Yeah,
We could see the results. We could figure out like, this is going to be a major hassle or not.
yeah.
Um, so maybe, maybe the answer is like, let's set up a nightly one. And then we're going to need to see people who are willing to figure out, well, is it just clean? Like, have we done everything right? Or are there a million things? Like, I know Coverity still complains about a bunch of things. Um, the ones that look real, I think we fixed a bunch of them. But anyway, that would be my suggestion. Like maybe we start nightly, see how
Okay.
often there's new things. And then like if that looks good, we could say, well, okay, like the JavaScript, Python, and TypeScript for the last month, there really hasn't been anything reported and it's quick. So let's just turn it on the PRs and
Yeah, I think we have three options here. The first one is remove the C++ from the GitHub
yeah,
CI. And
yeah,
then we start analyzing on every pull request. The second option is to have nightly builds. So every once per day, code will run on the main branch,
yeah,
and we will run for C++, JavaScript, Python, and TypeScript.
yeah,
And the third option is to disable C++ on the pull request and also enable and run it on as a nightly build only C++ every day on main. We keep
right,
the JavaScript, Python, TypeScript for every pull request, and we run the C++ once per day on main.
right. I like like it's almost like I'm kind of thinking turn on the nightly build with everything. If the JavaScript, Python, and TypeScript is basically clean, because you don't want to turn this on and now everything fails, right? Like so you need to get that clean. Once that's passing and clean, then you could say, well, okay, it's clean, so let's turn it on for the every PR. It only takes 10 minutes, right?
Okay.
But the nightly build, until we run like I don't maybe you've already run a build yourself, like you've already run it, but like until we know that it's not going to be failing and somebody has to fix something before we can turn it on,
Okay.
the
Yeah,
nightly
we
one
can we
to
can
start.
I think the nightly build would be a good start.
Yeah,
And then once we have like some trusty on that, we
yeah,
can move the JavaScript to every pull request. We keep the C++ until we figure out a better way to do that. Or for
yeah.
instance, just analyze the source folder, but not depths, things like that.
Definitely like because depths is a good example of where we generally in Coverity exclude those because like I think
Mm-hmm.
it analyzes everything, but like we say, don't tell us about those because like we can't really do anything about them. So
Okay.
yeah, so like we could figure out in that nightly one, like can we actually run it in a way
Uh,
that's effective that it's quick, right?
So let me drop a message in that request. So we have discussed it in today's secured working group meeting, and a feasible option would be changing this workflow to to run on nightlies uh, once per day, and do not block any pull request until we have a trust on this workflow run. The security team can take the action to review the runs, and make sure things are working as expected. All right. Okay.
The other question might be too, have you looked at all the other repos in terms of um like whether we use that as well?
I think starting with Node.js might show us the real gain of this feature. If
Sure.
Node.js is not able to get value from that, I don't think we should consider other repositories as well.
Sure. I'm yeah, like I'm okay with looking separately, but I can see like on Node add-on API, we've turned on CodeQL. So at some point it
Okay.
would be like, okay, what's all the list of the different repos? Do we turn it on or not? But yeah, no, I'd agree. The Node.js one is probably like is one where it's a good test of how it works.
Okay. Right. Next item on our agenda is on the Node.js Security Working Group repository. We have some actions, but I don't think we have a lot of time, so I will jump into some updates. If you go to the Node.js Security Working Group and you see the repositories, I have opened a pull request to include the impairing ability to the project day-to-day to the threat model. This is basically the thing we have discussed in the maintenance, the maintainer threat model. So if you can approve that, I can merge.
Which one? Sorry, which repo did you say it was again?
The security working group one.
Okay, so I see. Which number is okay? No, I'm still looking. Which number is it?
1461.
Okay. Right, got it. Okay. Doing it. Right this second.
Okay. And let me see. And the other update is from the update CVEs on end of life release lines. Marco took the action to create and generate a CVE of the versions that must be updated to be included. And I believe the next step is to send that CVE to the hacker one and ask them to update, right?
Yeah, so I talked with one employee of HackerOne called Ben Willis, but I think like because I've already been in contact and they said they would have a look, but it's been a while, so I think we should open a support ticket and send them the CSV. So I don't know how to open the support ticket.
Okay. I think it's a HackerOne ticket. We did one once. I did one once, but yeah, this link. I think you open as any other ticket I sent in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Then
Generally, that's what we've done. And then if we don't get an answer or whatever, we follow up. I mean, I think
by email, right?
yeah, there's a particular person that will email or something like that, but this is the first step to kind of get things engaged.
I will open a ticket right now. If that's okay, and
Yep.
We can follow up on the chat.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let me update there. Okay. Then one thing that's good to mention that the Node.js participated in the GitHub Security course, and we learned important stuff there. And Carlos is also participating in the working group and our next action is basically to create a blog post of it can be a public blog post, but we thought about an internal blog post to Node.js collaborators of what we learned and what actions we believe would be great to take in the Node.js space. One thing that is more it requires some urgency is to create a kind of best practice or a document explaining how we can be more secure using GitHub Actions. We are dealing with some changes in our GitHub CI, and these blog posts or this document might help us in that process. So I think that's it.
Okay, yeah, that is interesting. If there's like specific guidelines or things that say here's a good way to manage and set up GitHub Actions.
Yeah. I was talking with Carlos, and I think we are going to write this and send it as soon as possible.
Ideally, we'd have that landed in the repo, like however you send it to start with is fine, but like at some point it would be good to have a doc in one of our repos, like either the core repo in the contributor section, or maybe in the build repo in terms of like, when you're setting up a new GitHub action, here's the guidance, right? Because I'm not sure who typically sets those up today, right? Like I guess TSC members have access to be able to do that. But we want to make sure that it's somewhere where like everybody who could do it knows that there is some guidance and it's well documented somewhere, right?
I feel that there are best practice documents for GitHub CI everywhere. But some of them are like, if we make it too generic, that won't apply to Node.js. I think we should take a look in the Node.js workflow, see the things we use, and then we create a document based on that.
This should be very specific. Yeah, I agree. This should be very specific, like, and even like maybe include process things like, hey, you need something new in your GitHub action, you need to request on admin or whatever, right? Like, but yeah, it's not the general. It's something that like, hey, somebody said to me, Michael, hey, we want to have this new action and it needs to do X, and I have to give it certain privileges or whatever. That helps me say like, okay, I'm doing the right thing, or no, I'm not doing the right thing, right? Without having to think too much.
Yes. Let me update the minutes.
Yeah, like even like a checklist or something that says like when we're creating a new one, check these things.
Okay. And I believe that the next step is, I don't think we will have time to discuss, but one important things to discuss that is that we need to also review code scanning alerts. We have enabled that on Node.js, code scanning. We haven't enabled code kill. And it shows some warnings, most of them are false positives because it goes to the dApps folder, but it might also show some vulnerability or potential vulnerability on in our dependencies that we might want to inform to the users. All of them are not CVEs, are not vulnerabilities, but they are recommendations like change the token permissions, change the branch protections, and things like that. So I believe I have added that to the agenda, so we can jump in the meeting to discuss the topics, see if that's feasible for us or not. We have also had secret scanning alerts, but they were false positives. I have informed TSC, and I have dismissed all the alerts. So for now, we don't have any alert for secret scanning. We might want in the future to because those alerts requires us to go to the security page and see if we have alerts or not. We are not getting notified about it, and I believe we should be more slightly faster on this reaction. I don't know if if GitHub provides some hooks mechanism to send an email or create something that people will see that with more visibility. But this is something for the future.
Where do you see those things? I see there's like code
In the-
scanning. Is it the
I
code
sent
scanning
the
thing?
chat. Yeah, code scanning and secret scanning. It's vulnerability alert in the section.
I see code scanning, and then, anyway, yeah. If it's something we have to go and look, like who's doing that versus if there are things that are really high, then it would be better if that, like, say, the TSC got a notification or something.
Okay. So let me see if the minutes are correct. It looks good. Any update on audit build for dependencies?
No, I haven't started working on Amaro yet. Still
Okay.
my next in the list, but it may be still a few weeks before I start on that.
I have one final update on automation for the secret release process. I fixed the change log and commit generation for secret releases. So it was already landed. I don't know if I have mentioned it in the last meeting, but I will include it in the minutes because I don't think I did that last time. Change log and commit a message fix for secret releases. Okay. I think that's the end of our agenda. We have covered a lot of things. And I believe that in the next meeting, we might have the document to show to you about GitHub Actions, and then we can discuss with some details. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. Hope to see you in the next meeting. Bye-bye.